If you're looking for ways to define a style for your personal brand and find easy ways to create good looking content, then this video is for you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Hustle. In this video, we'll talk a little bit about how you can define your style and some things to keep in mind while developing the same. So, to kickstart things, I want to clear a very unpopular opinion. Less design doesn't translate into minimalism. Simple design creates minimalism. Now, the reason for that extra focus on minimalism before we actually start off with defining a style for your personal brand, because while everybody is moving towards that direction, only the ones that have actually nailed minimalism as a style have been able to succeed over here. It almost seems like everybody's flocking towards this style, not only because it's popular, but also because there's this notion around it that makes it seem like it's very easy, it's less work in general, which is why pursuing this kind of style makes a lot of sense at the very beginning. So getting that out the window to begin with, when you're going to figure out what kind of style works for you and what kind of look and feel your brand deserves, don't necessarily think minimalism because it's easy to achieve. And we'll see a lot of examples of great brands doing their guidelines well and the kind of stuff that they've done, minimal or not, which should give you a bit of a path in charting your style in an easier manner. So let's get started with this jam-packed video. By the way, if you're still not convinced on that minimalism front, then here's out of context 2 images. You tell me in the comment section which one you think is minimal because of simple design and which one because of less design. Don't just pick one of the two, let me know why you think so as well. So let's talk about some attributes that will help us understand how to achieve that brand consistency across diversity. So first important parameter to finalize is font. Try and maintain consistency across all your designs and try and focus only on 2 complementary fonts that work with each other, and based on the variance that you get with respect to the weight, with respect to the sizes, try and think of all the possible permutation combinations of these 2 fonts for all your collaterals across all your different branding avenues, whether it's websites, social media, whatever it may be. So here's a quick example of some fonts in action for, of course, renowned companies, but just to kind of give you an idea about how you can go about locking these fonts and what kind of things you should think about when you're looking to lock them. And this is a very, very kick-ass, super interactive brand guidelines setup that Starbucks has put together. And I can go on and on about the beauty of these guidelines and all the different things that they have described. But let's purely focus on typography in general because that's what we're talking about, right? Fonts. And if you can see over here, there's Sodo Sans, which they want to use because of its versatile look and feel, but frequently used for body copy, very clearly called out. Right? And the different variations of it, whether it's light, regular or bold. And you can see the same in different weights, in different sizes, just so that it gives you an idea of how this is going to play out across the different collaterals. And the next font, right? Their serif typeface that they use frequently, which is Lander, used more as an accent for expressive moments. So just to kind of get that little bit of a pinch in the design, so to say, right? That's kind of what they look to achieve with this serif font. And again, the same kind of interactivity that gives you a little bit of an idea of how this font looks when it's used in different weights and sizes. Starbucks also uses a font like Pike, which is a more impactful type, like you can see over here. Characters a little closer, a little longer, a little bold, condensed appearance, which can lend itself to functional headlines and wayfinding. So, of course, when they say functional headlines, it's clear that there's a use case for this specific type of font, whereas there's a use case for this specific kind of font. And as you start off, like I mentioned earlier, try and lock 2 complementary fonts in general. Mostly that should do the job for you. Starbucks, of course, across the different avenues that they explore, they feel the need to have 3 fonts. But here's another example. This is again Instagram. And of course, we are going through this just to draw inspiration, not something that we need to do when we define our brand, but check out what these folks have done. A custom typeface created for global scale apparently. And look at this. All the stuff, all the different alphabets, the characters very clearly called out in the guidelines, as you can see over here. And it also gives you a little bit of that evolution and the thought process behind how they came up with this typeface. It's a super interactive guidelines space, by the way. You should totally check it out, right? And look at this. in terms of what it originally was and why it evolved into this kind of treatment, and the rationale behind, the decisions behind some of the aspects of this font in general, very clearly called out in these guidelines, right? As you can see, the inspiration from the original word mark and how it has eventually evolved into giving a form such as this. And you can see a lot more in terms of the interactivity that is offered for this guidelines, like how you can see the font in different weights, the different alphabets, what the rationale is behind it, the spacing, etc. Beautifully called out in their guidelines. Very similar to the Starbucks guideline. Again, you can see the font in action across different alignments and color palettes and what have you. But yeah, this should give you a little bit of an idea into how you can lock your font and what kind of stuff you should think about when you lock on the same. Next important attribute to watch out for is weight. Try and use uniform stroke thickness across all these different elements, or even if it's not uniform, know why you're breaking the rules, right? If your brand is a little playful in nature, if it's a product for children maybe, then maybe you want something thicker, something that lends itself well to rounded corners and stuff like that. So think about those aspects in general and extend that same thinking to shapes as well, right? Where you're experimenting with different sizes, different shapes, thinking about the rhythm, the repetition based on the brand, based on what you kind of want to achieve with your product. And to get a real quick look see into what exactly I mean, let's have a look at Slack's brand guidelines. And what I'm going to try and do in this video, as you may have already guessed, is look at a variety of different brand guidelines of very popular companies across different spaces, right? We looked at a food and beverage chain in the form of Starbucks. We saw a social media behemoth like Instagram. Now we're talking about a B2B SaaS solution like Slack. But this should give you an idea of how all these companies, or whatever product or service you're looking to offer, these are things to think of in general and where exactly they come into play, right? For Slack, for example, their shapes have a lot more importance and emphasis with respect to the UI of the platform and where they intend to use it, right? So very clear call outs. And of course, if you've used Slack, you'd definitely be able to recall all these different elements and where they've used them. But as you can see, the chat bubble, the pill, and a little bit of rationale behind where exactly they're applied, right? The patterns, the backgrounds, the containers, a little bit of a call out to the solid versus stroke thing, the weights that I was describing earlier, all very clearly called out in their brand guidelines across a wide range of use cases. And if I can just indulge for a second a little bit more, because we're also talking about shapes, look at all the emojis that that work well for Slack, and the design considerations, right? How to think of your background colors, what are the shapes to use on those colors, and in general, what kind of a treatment from a visual perspective they're going for with respect to all these use cases, physical, digital, whatever it may be. And of course, this extends into illustrations, as you can see over here. The different kind of objects, whether they are icons in 2D, 3D, if you have to draw people, the kind of skin tones to use, of course, inclusivity being a very important parameter for all brands. So a little bit of the skin tones, the construction, the logo, and of course, eventually photography also, because all this at the end of the day comes into the realm of the visual language. And I know I've deviated a little bit just to give you a look-see into these facets of brand guidelines as well. Because yeah, at the end of the day, these are extensions to weight and shape to some extent. By the way, I talk a lot about this kind of stuff in a course that I've put together on how to freelance, the link for which is available in the description box below. In this course, distilled into 6 to 8 hours of content, I talk about all the things I've learned over the years hustling across a bunch of different things. Not only at my day job, where at a point I was overseeing the work of close to 400 people in a wide range of content creation aspects, but also hustling on the side with our own agency, Design Crescendo, right? With over 50-60 clients that we have worked with across a bunch of various tasks. So do check it out if that's the kind of stuff that you need to just give yourself an extra boost in your hustle. Moving on, finally, the color palette. This is very important at the end of the day, because this is what you will use to describe your brand, right? Based on what the product is, or based on what the service is, and what kind of emotion you want to evoke in the user or customer. If it's trust that you want to bring, if it's freshness from a food perspective that you want to bring, the greens that need to pop out, or the blues from a security, hospital, safety, trust angle that may be required maybe for an AI SaaS tool or whatever. Think about the color palette that works well for your brand and try and extend that palette from the perspective of, say, background color, or for text, or for highlights, for depth, and all these different aspects. Think about all these angles and then only define your color palette so that you can see it extending and lending itself well to multiple parameters and aspects in general. There are a bunch of tools that you can use to find the best color palette for you, right? Colorhunt.co, for example, something that you can use, something that I've used in the past for a few hustles on the side. But let's just have a look at, say, Google, for example. And I want to show you colors of, say, a brand like Google because they try and leverage multiple colors in general. Now, of course, when you're starting off, you want to keep things simple, stick to 1-2 colors. But let's just see how Google uses multiple colors, right? And I'm sorry if it brings that extra layer of complexity, which ideally we want to be avoiding at the very beginning. But this should also give you a look-see into a wide range of things where these colors have an impact and how they need to be used. So that's the reason why. So as you can see over here, the very obvious blues, reds, yellows, greens, and how they work in tandem with the grays, right? And of course, whenever you're creating brand guidelines that call out colors, you want to call out the hex code, the CMYK weights, all those different aspects so that it's very clear for anybody who's using it across different media. And as you can see over here, how when 2 colors are used, the red and the gray, when 2 colors are used, the blue and the gray, or the green and the gray, and how it extends into, say, triads, right? As you can see with a bunch of the different logos, very familiar logos of all their apps, and how these colors come into play. The sequence in terms of how you need to use the colors and what is the order in general in terms of importance and weight. And say when you have a total variety of colors, right, with all 4 used, as you can see some examples over here. So it's always good to just do this quick exercise, look at some players in your space, see what they're doing. That gives you, it's a little bit of a homework, so to say, that you can do for yourself before you start defining your own brand guidelines and your own style. And just see the rationale behind some of the decisions they've made, right? Why those many colors? Google, of course, offers a massive suite of various tools that can be used across a bunch of different use cases, which is why, they probably require the 3-4 colors. And of course, Google, originally supposed to be Google 10 to the power of 100 or whatnot, to just kind of show the wide range of content that they provide to you as a user, is why it probably makes sense to show a spectrum of colors as well in their brand in general. So think about the thought process behind why you take these decisions and see how you can use these guiding principles to achieve that sense of design that works best for your brand. There's more to talk about brand building, which we will in subsequent videos, but this should give you a little bit of a prelim into how you can think about defining your style. But yeah, that's it for this video. If you like the content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Peace out. I'll see you in the next one.